So welcome everyone to this information session on DAAD RISE Germany Research Internships in Science and Engineering. We have a special guest speaker, our very own Dr. Shannon Connolly, who I'll introduce in a moment, who is an alum of this program. So we'll start out with some housekeeping items. The first is to please rename yourselves if you haven't already, put in your first and last name on Zoom. Second, we will be doing a short written activity during this workshop. We want to give you a chance to start thinking about what you would put in a motivation letter, your cover letter for an application for this opportunity. So if you don't already have this nearby, if you could take this time now to grab either a pen or pencil and a piece of paper, it can be a piece of scratch paper, anything works. Or open up on your computer or device a place where you can type or write down for rewriting for about 5 minutes a bit later on in the workshop. So if you could have that material with you now. And then also, since we will be working in pairs after you do your writing part of this activity, I will then be pairing you off to share some of your answers to the questions. For that part, we ask that you please have video and audio enabled on your device. If video is not an option, please have audio enabled. And we really encourage you to have video enabled even now if you're comfortable with it, so that we can all see each other in the room. Okay, and so for Zoom, basic rules that you're all familiar with by now, please keep yourselves on mute during the presentation. We'll have time for questions and answers. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. And when we get to a stopping point for Q&A, we'll be sure to check that and answer them. Let's see here. And so I know that a number of you had questions about eligibility for this fellowship. And with a lot of fellowships, the rules for eligibility and how it affects your particular case can require some extra research. So we encourage you to take what you can in from the presentation today. And if that doesn't answer your eligibility question, to look on the DAAD RISE website under frequently asked questions. And even there, you also have the opportunity to write to a program officer if you're really not sure that you got your question answered by the materials available there. So without further ado, let's get into today's program. And we'd like to start out with a poll. And after that, I will introduce our speakers, but let's get a sense of who is in the room today. And I believe that my co-host, Dr. Connolly, has a poll, which I have not used polls in Zoom yet, so I'm excited to see.
And now I think I know why. Because as I was trying to set up this poll, I think that depending on what version of Zoom you have or don't have this feature. And it may be because we switched off posting duties just before we got started. So I don't actually see the option to create the poll to put it up on the screen for you all, but I posted a question in the chat. And so what I'm hoping is that we can be a little informal and a little interactive before we even get started. And many of you are familiar with Zoom, so you know how to use reactions. The first question that we would have put up here on the screen for you is, are you an undergraduate or a graduate student? Because this opportunity has two different pieces, one that's focused on undergraduates and one that's focused on graduate students. So if you would like to let us know, let's ask first, how many of you are undergrads? Raise your hand, wave at us, turn off your mic and yell.
There's also under reactions tab at the bottom, the smiley face with a plus. There's you can, well, is that what we're thinking of? That's not raise your hand, is it?
Yeah, put a reaction in your screen. You don't have to turn your webcam on unless you'd like to, but can we get a hand? Yep, I see at least one up.
I'm an undergrad and I'm from my major in biological sciences in concentration of pre-med.
Oh, great, welcome. And from our pre-registration list, it looked like we would have the majority of you be undergraduate students, which is great because this is an opportunity, again, that's open to both. So we'll assume that we're maybe a little more than 50% undergrads, but at least some graduate students are here. I know that because I recognize a few of your names. The second question, this may be harder to do because we don't have the poll, but we would love to know what college or school you're in. So again, maybe I'll just run through them and ask you to use the hand up or the little celebration emoji as I call out your college names. So first, college, do we have anyone from College of Business Administration here with us? I would be surprised since this is a STEM-focused award, but you would still be most welcome. You never know. College of Education? Any hands? Engineering? Okay. College of Health Sciences. Liberal Arts. This is going to be the big one, College of Science. Okay.
Yes, lots of science.
Thumbs
Most of
up.
the heart for that too. Excellent.
Wonderful. Well, you're all most welcome. Whatever college or school you are from, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, we are very glad that you're here. And I guess I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm Shannon Connolly. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Graduate School here at UTEP. And as Dr. Meinzer mentioned, I'm a DAAD Research Ambassador. I'll tell you a little bit more in a minute what that means. And actually, I'm not an alum of this particular program, but of the another funding opportunity that the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Service, offers. I had a full year research grant during my PhD studies. I'm an art historian by background, so I'm not in the STEM fields, but I am a Germanist. So I have a deep affinity and a love for Germany and German culture. My PhD dissertation was about German art between the two world wars. And I lived in a southwestern city called Karlsruhe for 1 year. And I spent another year in Berlin. So I know Germany pretty well. And I hope that some of you are here because you're interested, not only in having a research internship, but doing research abroad, and specifically in Germany. I can tell you that it's a great place for research. There are a lot of funding opportunities beyond the DAAD. So we'll talk specifically about the RISE program today, but if you have other questions about research in Germany, we'll post a link where you can begin to explore other options, and you can always contact me directly if you have questions. Again, that's my job as a research ambassador for the German Academic Exchange Service, is to help students, especially UTEP students, get familiar with those programs. Before we get started, I also want to introduce two of my colleagues who are here with me today from the graduate school, two of your peers. One of them is Sal Dominguez, who you might see popping into the chat. Sal is a PhD student in interdisciplinary health sciences and a graduate assistant on our team. And Lourdes Jimenez, who will also pop into the chat from time to time, is a current undergraduate student in biochemistry and an undergraduate assistant with us in the graduate school. Lourdes is also familiar with the RISE program as a former applicant, who I hope will apply again in the future. So we can also ask for questions about what that was like, and I think she'll be willing to answer them at the end. So again, if you have questions as we go through, please type them in the chat. I'll try to take some breaks to field questions if they're timely as we go along, but I really want to save a lot of time for your questions and to practice writing one of the major components of this application. So I think without further ado, we'll get started. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? Good. Let me know if any issue along the way. So you should now see a slide that gives an overview of today's presentation. Great. We've had a welcome and we've introduced ourselves to each other. And my job in the first part of this presentation is to give you an overview, both of the research landscape in Germany, very briefly, and then go into more detail on these two specific programs that are under the DAAD RISE. So the RISE Germany program for undergraduate students and the DAAD RISE professional program for graduate students and alumni of the DAAD RISE undergraduate program. We'll talk about both of those in more detail and provide you some slides with dates, deadlines, and other important details. We can talk a little bit about why you might consider doing research abroad, why this is something that could be good for your career, your professional, personal growth. Happy to talk more about the experience of living in Germany and answer any questions you may have. And we'll finish up with a practice and peer review where you have a chance to answer some questions that will help you think about writing a letter of motivation for this opportunity, and hopefully can get you thinking about other fellowships you might apply for. And then we'll save time at the end for some Q&A. All right. I actually would be remiss, I didn't start out this presentation by saying herzlich willkommen. We won't speak German, but I want to welcome you to the research landscape in Germany and just give you a couple facts and figures to get started. Germany is a fantastic place to study and do research because the federal government of Germany is very, very committed to putting financial resources behind that study and research, both for German citizens and for international scholars, whether they are students, postdocs, junior researchers, senior researchers. There are a wealth of opportunities to study and do research in Germany. More than 1,000 publicly funded research institutions. Some of the most famous you may have heard of are things like the Helmholtz, the Max Planck Institutes, especially in the STEM fields. Those are major research centers that are scattered all over Germany. You can see the research expenditures. These are figures are a couple years old, but 92 billion euros or 2.93% of GDP is devoted to research. 657,000 people in the research and development sector in Germany, and a number of bilateral cooperations with other European countries, partnerships across the Atlantic with North America and across the globe, really. So why Germany? I'm showing you here just a few photos that I took during the time that I was living there that still resonate with me. You might recognize the castle in the top right. That's Schloss Neuschwanstein in Bavaria, which is a very popular tourist destination. It's a beautiful, kind of typical Bavarian day, although you don't see that blue sky. That's very, very common in photos from the site. Some dramatic clouds, a flower market, that traditional half timber construction in the lower left, and then my friend Susanna looking at a painting in the Staatsgalerie in Stuttgart, which was something that was very near and dear to my heart. But there may be other reasons why you might be interested in studying or doing research in Germany. And I wonder, again, before we go too far into the specific funding opportunities, if I could ask you all a quick question. So, and you can type your answers in the chat. First thing that comes to your mind when you think of Germany. There's no wrong answer. Nice. Okay, I have two quick beers. National soccer team, advanced technology, modern, clubs, European centerpiece. Y'all are good. This is a very varied list. Art. For sure, awesome. Nobody said pretzels, but maybe that goes with the beer or not. Beer's some serious people, right? So there might be some cultural stereotypes that we have in mind when we think of Germany. So many of these things that you've mentioned, from the beer, if you are a beer drinker, I can attest to the fact that they have some of the best beer with a very long tradition of beer making. Bread, pretzels. Sometimes the food gets a bad rap, but especially if you're a vegetarian, Germany is a much friendlier place than it used to be, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. There's a real diversity of cuisine and a real diversity of people throughout Germany and its major urban centers. It's really not a homogenous place, and that is true as you look at the different regions of Germany. So thanks for submitting those answers, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go along. I'm showing this slide here just to give you a sense of place. And I realize that the image of the map is a little fuzzy, so you may not be able to read the states very well, but this is Germany. And you see here the Länder, or the states, with the kind of gray outline. And what you see in those blue boxes are the universities of excellence. The way that the German university system is kind of structured or clustered, they have these clusters of excellence that are funded especially by the German government. And you can see where some of those clusters of excellence are clustered. I don't know if you can see my cursor moving around, but especially here's Berlin. So quite a few institutions up here in the Northeast around Berlin. Another big hub, this is where I lived when I was in Germany, around Karlsruhe. Here's Stuttgart over here. Another city you may have heard of, Heidelberg, a very famous old university. Right here, this is Baden-Württemberg, which is a state that has a lot of research and industry productivity. And then here in North Rhine-Westphalia, you have Cologne and Bonn and here Dortmund. So the person who mentioned soccer, some of these cities are going to be familiar to you. So that's just to give you a lay of the land. And here a chart showing research expenditures by sector. This is important to know for the DAAD RISE program because those of you who are thinking about the RISE professional internship, graduate students and alumni of the program, you're going to be placed in industry, in companies in Germany. And you see that those research expenditures are by and large within the industrial sector. So there's a lot of dollars going into innovation within German industry. Not surprising because you may be familiar with some of the companies and the logos here on the screen. 10 German corporations are among the top 20 European innovation drivers. So companies like Siemens, BMW, Volkswagen, Daimler-Benz, so Mercedes, SAP, Bayer, Bosch, Continental, many of these companies are familiar to us. So one of the great things about the RISE program is the opportunity to get connected to a network, not only in Germany, but really an international network of colleagues, scholars, professionals who are driving innovation in their field. So let's talk about the two funding opportunities we're focusing on today, the DAAD RISE Germany and the DAAD RISE Professional. We'll start with RISE Germany, which is focused on undergraduate students. And I'll show you here a slide that gives an overview of the program, and then we'll drill down in a little bit more detail. I imagine that questions will arise, especially related to eligibility and field of study. And if you have those questions, if they occur to you as I'm presenting, please type them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end because some of you may have similar questions. I also want to remind you that whenever you have a question about eligibility related to a funding opportunity, it's always best to go to the source, go to the program page under their FAQs to find the really detailed information about eligibility that would be specific to your situation. So with that in mind, let's get started. RISE stands for Research Internships in Science and Engineering. So we're talking about the STEM fields. These are really tailored to those areas of study. And RISE Germany is intended to promote exchange, international exchange for undergraduate students who've reached a certain point in their studies to get kind of a first impression of the German research landscape, to make those first connections to a university or a non-university research site, and to make connections to German doctoral and postdoctoral students who will be your mentors in this summer internship program. Who's eligible? Undergrads who have completed at least 2 years of study by the time that they begin their internship. The duration of this summer internship is 3 months. It can be a maximum 90 days, minimum of 10 weeks, and it does happen in the summer. And it's a paid internship. So, and these rates, I should say, have just gone up from last year. So it's a nice package of support. The monthly stipend is 861 euros at present. You can do the conversion rate. I actually haven't done it recently, but it's a comfortable little stipend to keep you going during the time that you're there. And then you'll also receive travel costs. So of course, you're not going to pay for your plane ticket. It'll be the monthly stipend plus travel costs to go to and from Germany. You'll see the website for this program at the very bottom. And before I move into the details, let me just pause and make sure there are no questions that we need to answer before we move on. Looks like we're caught up on the chat. I still see beers and serious people. Okay, so who can apply? For an internship placement for summer 2021, the upcoming deadlines are going to be this fall, coming up in the next couple of months for summer 2021. And I do want to mention here that due to the COVID situation, last year's program was canceled. So folks applied for summer 2020 and those awardees, their internships were canceled. Now, everybody knows that the situation globally is changing all the time. There have been spikes here in El Paso. There have been spikes internationally. At this time, we're still keeping an eye on it, but DAAD has said that their intention is to move forward with all of their funding programs for summer 2021. The one thing to keep in mind is that they are going to give preference to reapplicants who had their trips canceled. So this year might be a little strange, but you never know. I don't think that it's going to be a one-to-one where everyone who applied last year will reapply this year. Maybe some have graduated. Maybe it no longer makes sense to travel this summer. But just to keep that in mind, that this is a little bit of an unusual application cycle and it's an unusual time. So bearing in mind as you think about these guidelines. But for a placement this coming summer, you must be currently enrolled at a university or college, and for us, we're talking about the US, as an undergraduate student in one of the fields that you see here on the screen. And that is pretty specific or a closely related field. So if you are in the health sciences, you want to look closely at the eligibility and make sure that you're eligible to apply for this opportunity given your major field of study. I will also say that this opportunity is open to both US citizens, permanent residents, international students, as long as you are a currently enrolled student at UTEP, because we are a North American university, you're eligible to apply. There will be different visa requirements if you're selected and you go to Germany as an international student, as a non-US student, but you are definitely eligible and encouraged to apply. So you're going to be an undergrad who's completed at least 2 years of a degree program by the time of your placement. So not by the time you apply, but by the time you would start your internship in summer 2021, you'll need to have completed 2 years of your program. And you'll need to prove that you will maintain continuing status after the internship. So this isn't for folks who are about to graduate. And a lot of people ask me about German language skills. Are they required? They are not required. In a lot of these labs and research institutes, English is commonly spoken and they are not expecting that you're fluent or even that you have background in German language study. However, I can tell you that German's really great and it's fun to learn and you should all do it. No. Your experience abroad will be enhanced if you have some familiarity, even if it's a basic familiarity with the language. And DAAD is great because they always include a language supplement for those who don't have German already. There is an option to take a language course before you begin your internship, and they'll give you a pretty nice stipend toward that cost. So keep that in mind. Don't be intimidated because you may not know a word of German. You don't have to, but it can be a really nice benefit and help you get along with your colleagues and order your beer or go buy a ticket for a soccer match auf Deutsch. Right. Here, I won't spend too much time on this, but here's the money breakdown, the important stuff, right? The monthly stipend, again, and health insurance, personal liability, that's also very important, that's included. So you're taken very good care of when you receive an award from DAAD. All interns are invited to a 3-day meeting before the start of the internship, and they receive a travel allowance for that. So again, it's a really nice way to get involved with the community before you begin your internship at your specific site. And there's a travel subsidy for those who are coming from North America to Germany. It is basically a 3-month summer internship that has to happen between these dates shown. You can start anytime between those dates, but the minimum stay is 10 weeks. The maximum stay is 90 days. That all has to do with visa things. So you'll be there for 90 days max. But the details will be hammered out between the awardee and their internship supervisor. So this is a general framework, generally the summer, but that the specific dates will be worked out with the internship coordinator in the site. Here's how you apply. If you're interested in submitting an application this fall, you want to look really closely at the eligibility guidelines and register in the internship database. You can see the URL here on the screen, the application portal. It's that long URL that's after the kind of blue underlined application portal bit. Important thing to note for DAAD Rise is that the internship database, so the database of potential internship sites doesn't open until November 1st. So if you're interested in Rise, thinking about it, you can kind of get your thoughts together and maybe start working on your materials, but you won't know the potential sites until this database opens. And they do this the same way every year. Opens up on the 1st, and it's open until the application deadline, which is December 15th for undergrads. And here's a list of what you need to submit an application. And we'll go into a little more detail on this. Motivation letter for each project you apply for. So you're applying for multiple internship placements, and you'll need to submit a tailored letter for each one. You're going to submit your CV, a list of courses that, this is a supplement to your official transcript. Do note that DAAD requires your official, not your unofficial transcript. And that means even if it's mailed to you in a sealed letter, you're going to need to open it and scan it. They need the official and not the unofficial. So that might be a little different. You know, UTEP does, of course, for admission, accept unofficial transcripts. And so that's a timely thing that you'll want to keep in mind if you need to request it, if you're a graduate student from your undergraduate institution. You'll need a certificate of enrollment, which you download from the application site. And very, very important, a letter of reference. You just need one from a senior academic, so somebody who holds a PhD in your field of study from your home university. So a professor who has taught you in a course here at UTEP. Only complete applications will be passed along. So you want to make sure you have all these items ready by the time that you're submitting so that your application can be reviewed, and you may be contacted by the internship provider if they have questions. All right. So now I want to move on to the graduate version of what I've just described, and I'll go through it pretty quickly because it's very, very similar. You'll see that the application itself, the criteria are almost identical to the RISE Germany for undergraduates, but RISE Professional, of course, is going to place you in a company rather than a university or a non-university research center. And the timing is a little bit different, not just strictly limited to the summer. Okay. And this I won't go into, but I'm showing you here, again, just to maybe plant a seed in your mind, if you're a graduate student, for other opportunities to pursue your research in Germany. There are quite a few, and I just show them here. You'll have these slides after the presentation, but this gives you a sense of some of the other opportunities when you're at that master's or doctoral level to do research stays in Germany at a German institute. Here's the quick and dirty on RISE Professional. Again, it's STEM focused, so opportunities for STEM students to gain work and research experience in a German company or a non-university research institution. And that might be something, like I mentioned, like Max Planck, that is not specifically a university, but a non-university research institution. Who's eligible? Masters and PhD students, also undergraduates who are RISE alumni. I don't think we have any RISE alumni at UTEP, so this probably doesn't relate to anyone in the room today, but if you win a RISE award as an undergrad, You can apply for a RISE Professional Award. That's one of the nice perks while you're still an undergrad. So maybe while you're a senior, when you're no longer eligible for the RISE Germany program, you can then apply for RISE Professional. The duration is the same. It's maximum 90 days, minimum 10 weeks. And the monthly stipend varies. You see here I have a range from about 850 euros to 1,200 euros, and you'll see why in a second. Again, this includes a stipend and travel costs to get you to your site in Germany. And here's the eligibility overview for the RISE Professional program. You must be enrolled in a master's or PhD program here at UTEP in one of the fields that you see on the screen or a very closely related field. So again, these are STEM focused internships, or be an undergraduate RISE Germany alumni, as we just discussed. Applicants must prove their enrollment at the time of the internship. And so here's a note, and this is because this is a professional internship rather than an academic university one. There is a requirement that international students who apply for RISE Professional must have been in country for at least 12 months at the time of application. And recent graduates are not eligible to apply. So you'll do this while you're still enrolled in your program here at UTEP. Same as the RISE Germany for undergraduates, German language requirements are not required. They're going to depend on the nature of the internship, but I would say that for RISE Professional, it probably is in your interest to have a little background or to definitely take advantage of that stipend for language study, because it's more likely that you'll get by easier if you have some familiarity with German language in the professional setting. But it varies greatly based on the actual placement. Here again, I won't go into too much detail, but you can see on the slide the breakdown of the scholarship value. You see that it's combined from a couple different sources, with that base being quite a bit higher for PhD students than for undergrads or master's students. The host company contributes an additional stipend. That's why these are a little higher than the RISE Germany for undergrads. And that's going to be an additional salary of at least 500 euros per month. Travel expenses, health insurance. Like the other internship program, you're invited to a 3-day meeting in Heidelberg at the very beginning, and a travel reimbursement to do so, and this stipend for a language course. Do note the difference here in the internship duration. Again, it's 10 weeks minimum, 90 days maximum, 3 months maximum, but it can happen anytime consecutively between May 15th and December 31st. So you don't have to limit it to the summer. This could also happen in the fall semester of next year. How do I apply is very similar to the RISE Germany program. You'll need to register in the database, take a look at the link that's shown here. The timeline is also very similar. The database of opportunities will open on November 1st, and the deadline is 1 day later than the RISE Germany program. It's December 16th. All letters of reference must be submitted by December 22nd, so they have a little bit more time than you do to submit their materials. Here's what you need to apply. Again, it's very similar to the undergraduate version. The motivation letter that's tailored to each of the companies you're applying to. Your CV, letter of ref, and you need 2 letters of reference for this one. Letter of reference from a past employer, if available. So if you have some professional experience, you're allowed to upload a letter from a previous employer, and you'll need to upload a letter of reference from a senior academic in your field from your current university. So you'll need those, but you'll want to have both, and you'll need to have that one academic reference for sure. Copy of your passport, again, because this is a professional placement, a little bit different than the other opportunity. Okay, I'm going to put these again up as teasers, but I'm going to skip over them because we're really laser focused on RISE today. Happy to talk more about other opportunities at another time, but I think we are basically right about on time to jump to an interactive activity. First a free write, and then we'll pair you off together So I'll turn it over back to Dr. Meinzer to introduce this activity. And the idea here is to get you starting to think whether or not you decide to apply to DAAD RISE about what a good, strong letter of motivation will look like for an external funding opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Connolly. And I'm going to, before we get started on this activity, I'm going to just make myself the host so I can set up the breakout rooms, but then I will make you also co-host. Okay, so here's the deal. Every application that you write for an internship or a fellowship, a graduate fellowship, will have some kind of cover letter or personal statement essay. And so for DAAD RISE, the letter of motivation is the cover letter that goes with your application to that particular company. And so it's kind of a combination of a job cover letter and a personal statement in one. So the personal statement, if you've written one of those before, it's going to be far less of that. It's going to focus more on what are the skills and benefits that you bring to this, this internship. But it will have an element of telling through that letter something that they won't get from just looking at your resume and your transcript. So you want to think about how can you introduce yourself to these companies in a way where they can see your motivation, the reasons why you're doing this and why you'll be successful in it, which they can then say, okay, I know that. And then I look at the resume and now I can see they have the preparation and the credentials to do this. So what I wanted us to do today is start some brainstorming for a letter of motivation. You may end up using this for another fellowship, another internship, but it's always useful to take a step back and think about how you would answer these questions. So I'd like you to take out that pen and piece of paper or open that document or notepad on your computer or on your phone and have that ready. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take the next 5 minutes, and I will time it and let you know when we're drawing to a close, to answer one of these 3 questions. So you can see the questions up here, and then if yes, so Sal is posting them also in the chat. So if you're not joining us on video, you can see those, perhaps see those there, but you're going to pick one of these 3 questions and pick one that you don't readily know the answer to, one that would require you to reflect a little bit. And so jot down on that piece of paper, on that open Word document, the first ideas that come to mind. You won't be giving this to anybody. You'll just be talking about it with your partner in a pair and then sharing in the large group with us. So are there any questions you can put in the chat or you can unmute yourself? Any questions about what we're about to do here? Okay, great. So let's start that 5 minutes. And at the close of the 5 minutes, I will come back on here and let you know that I'm going to move you into breakout groups. Once you're in those breakout groups, it'll be 2 people. And you'll just share, introduce yourself, turn on video if you can, and share what you wrote and just talk about it together. And then we'll come back together in a large group and share what you talked about in the small groups. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's now move to the breakout rooms. So I've assigned everyone into pairs in the rooms. And when you get there, please introduce yourself and then share a bit about what you wrote. And we'll put you in the rooms for about 5 minutes, and then I will broadcast an invitation to come back to the main room, and we'll talk for a bit, answer some questions, just really talk about what you talked about and then questions you have about this program. So I will open the rooms now, and we'll see you back in about 5 minutes. And all right, everybody is back here with us. So let's have some, let's hear what you talked about. I want to hear some, anything interesting. What did you learn about the person you spoke with or the people you spoke with for some of the rooms? Go ahead and unmute yourself so you can tell us.
Hi. So I was partnered with Braulio. I think that's how you say his name. Sorry. He wants to be a marine biologist, and I feel like this internship would be like for him, like, you know, how like more research, and like this would be like a good, what's it called? It'd look really good for him to have like this as like a past experience as an internship and stuff. And we also were talking about how like as undergrads, like how much are they expecting from us? Like, you know, like it's just we're gonna be barely, I mean, for me at least, I'm barely gonna be completing like my full 2 years by the time like in the summer 2021. And it's just how many past experiences or like past research or skills like that do they expect from us, or like, I don't know, like to stand out maybe, or like what could be good for them, like what are they, not what are they looking for, but what would be like good to have like on our belts.
I can speak to that, and then Dr. Meinster, if you want to weigh in more generally. I think this is a question that comes up with a lot of research fellowships, is how do you make your past experience shine? And so one thing I would say is that your application will be reviewed holistically. So your grades are important. Your letter of motivation is really important. I think that is probably the most important part of your application, but your letter of reference, because there's only one for RISE Germany, is also very important. And so you need to be strategic about who you ask. And that person can do a lot of work for you, because your motivation letter will be more personal. You'll talk about the experiences you've had. It's okay if you have not had a ton of them. I think that this program understands it's open to students who've had 2 years. And as an undergraduate with 2 years on your belt, you may not have had the opportunity to be in a lab for very long, if at all. And the idea of an internship like this is to give you that next step and the level up, if you will, the experience working with doctoral, postdoctoral, and more senior researchers to get those research chops on your resume. And the reason this is funded by the German government is that they place a lot of value in this research, and they want to introduce promising young scholars to the research landscape in Germany. So they want to build your international network. All that to say that I think multiple drafts will be your best friend. You won't get it perfect on the first time. And so doing exercises like this, having your peers read your letter of motivation, going to the University Writing Center, when you get to your final draft, I want to make sure I put that out there, when you get to your final draft and it's 2 weeks before the deadline, at least, you can share it with Dr. Meinster's office for feedback on that final polished version to really make your application strong. But all of those things will help you to be competitive and rise above. Another thing you might want to keep in mind for this opportunity is that you'll know the potential internship sites when the database opens, and you'll see that they're scattered all over Germany. Keep in mind, and this goes for things like Fulbright too, that there are going to be more popular cities than others just because of awareness. Most people have heard of Berlin. Most people have heard of Frankfurt. Not as many people may be familiar with Karlsruhe, where I lived for a year, which was an awesome city that had a lot going on, major university center. But you'll want to be, I would encourage you to be open and do some looking, see what it's like there. Germany's really cool because it has a lot of regional diversity, and Bavaria is very different from Berlin. All of Germany is not like the impression you might have of Oktoberfest. That's very regionally specific. So be open to considering opportunities in a city you might not have heard of, and know that you may be more competitive if you put in a strong application for that position versus another one.
Yes, and I want to leave some more time to hear more about what you guys talked about. I can just add in on top of that, what you can do now before you know what the opportunities will be, before they're posted and you can access them, is think about how you can talk up your strengths. The motivational letter of motivation is like this personal statement. It's so crucial to sound very aware of your accomplishments, aware of your potential, and aware of your leadership experience and skills. So say, and I think what Dr. Connolly said about they're looking for an appropriate level of experience for this next opportunity. So you don't have to be the undergraduate who has done 3 research assistantships. That's not what they're necessarily, they're not deciding based on who has done the most. They're looking for someone who can do it, who has the preparation to do it, and who can convey that sense of confidence to the host institution that we can rely on this person. This person takes the initiative, they're self-driven, they have some leadership experience, whatever that looks like, whether it's mentoring others, being part of student organizations. So I encourage you to take this time now to reflect on the whole picture of what you've done in your college career and how that brings up or highlights traits that you have that will make you an appealing candidate paired with your experience. So what else? Let's have another brave volunteer. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. My name is Yi Ching. Hi. I was paired with Miranda. She's a very brave girl. We talked about our chosen questions. We both chose the question 1, and she was very clear about her ultimate goal, and she wanted to go for a 1-year gap year to teach English in some other countries and go back to medical school. And while she said that was the most clear question to her, but in the opposite way, that was the hardest question for me because I'm at the 4th year of my PhD study. I'm at the point to choose either stay in academia or step in industry. So I consider this opportunity as a way for me to know my potential feelings about industry, because I already know my feelings about academia for so many years. So I have my question is, like, people like me or students like me who are uncertain about their future plan, but are surely know what they want, like, or what kind of working environment they want. For example, like either industry research lab or the academia, I'm pretty sure they want the same person, like with critical thinking, they're strong-minded and self-driven. But will that be advantages for people like me or disadvantages because we are uncertain, just choosing that opportunity as a way to see things? That, I guess that's my question. Yeah.
That's a really good question. Dr. Meitzer, did you want to jump in first?
You go ahead.
I think I want to say briefly, I think you should go for it because it sounds to me like you would be a great candidate. If you find a professional site that looks interesting to you, it's my impression that you would have some good research background. It is totally okay if you have not 100% decided yet in your 4th year whether you want to go on an academic track or an industry track. And this internship is exactly for people in your situation who want to get that intensive experience in a professional setting in industry, in Germany, of course. But if you're open to doing that work abroad, I say there's no better way to test it out, make those connections, and do a really serious project that is of a finite period. It fits within your study. I mean, I think it sounds like a very good opportunity for you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
We have a minute left. Were there any other questions that came up in your conversations or anything about the presentation today?
And while we wait for folks to unmute themselves or maybe type a question in the chat, I'll share screen one more time just to show you a list of resources. If you're interested in RISE, or maybe it doesn't quite fit you now, there are lots of other funding opportunities, like I mentioned, and a good place to start looking for them is a site called researchingermany.org. I'll post it here in the chat, and I'll show you this slide that I'm talking about. Let's see here. That will give you a good starting point to build a profile and look for opportunities across sectors, university, non-university research institute, and in industry. Okay, I think it's going to be complicated to share my screen, so I'm just going to type it here in the chat. We'll go old-fashioned way.
I think that'll be good. And you can just copy the link from there. And I'm going to put another link in here since we're drawing up on time. Let's see. Okay, so, and I should have introduced myself in the beginning of the presentation, but I am the director of the new Office of Student Fellowships and Awards at UTEP. And so I'm here as a resource for you as you apply for external fellowships for study abroad, research, graduate school. There is a list of supported fellowships. It's not every fellowship. So every fellowship you find isn't necessarily going to be one that's supported through my office. But if you are interested in research abroad, Fulbright, and I know that Yu King mentioned, she was talking with Miranda. Miranda, if you're interested in that gap year being abroad, Fulbright, I'm sure you're already looking at it, but for others who are interested in those types of experiences, check out the website, see if there are any fellowships that line up with your academic and career goals, and send me an email. So here is my email address in the chat here. General inbox where you can write. Some of the fellowships require nomination, many of them don't, but I look forward to hearing from you. And since we are at time, I think maybe we'll wrap up the session. So thank you very much, Dr. Connolly, for that overview. Thank you all for being here and participating in the activity. And please do follow up with us. I see Dr. Connolly has just posted her email address in the chat as well. And yes, we look forward to working with you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, don't hesitate. Please reach out if you have questions. And thanks to Dr. Meinzer for organizing this.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I'm going to close it out now.